I'm unmuted. You can hear me? Great. Okay, I'm not getting any, okay, I'm not getting, other than you, and I presume you're speaking to me only on the cell, I can't hear anything yet. I should have, yeah, okay. Let's just check that. I'm going to mute myself now. Let's see what happens. I should be coming through now. Great. Any echo, feedback? Excellent. Thank you so much, Jim. I'll stay on in this setting. And is Rabbi Hartovsky there yet? Not yet. All right, I'll call him on his cell. Thanks. I can see Minina, she's waving at me and she is wearing blue and she's still got blonde hair. And I'm not wearing a mask. Yeah, I can see Nina and I'm looking at some of the people in the background. Can't exactly see. There's somebody in a burgundy, looks like some sort of burgundy jacket. That looks like Doreen possibly. Yes. Okay. I'm muting myself now.
Sure, now we're getting that feedback.
Move it onto the grass. Move it onto the grass.
I remember when I was a young chazan, when I was 23 or 24 years old, and a lot of the funerals I would do, people were in their 60s and 70s. And now, as an old chazan, people are making it to 100. And that's amazing. And I hope it was a great life. I'd like to start with beautiful Psalm 23, Mizmar David. Many people associate it with a funeral, but we sing it on Shabbos at Mincha because it speaks about rest and God's protection. Mizmor David, Adonai Rohi Elohecha, Binotesh Yarbitzeni. Menufot Yenaleni Nafshi Yishoel Yancheni V'maglet Zedek Hoyleman Shemo Gam ki elech begetzal mavet lo irara ki ata imadi shiltecha umishanetecha heima Yenachamuni Taruch lefonai Shulchan neged Sorah Tishan Tavashem en Roshi Kosir Revaya Achtav Chesed Yirdefuni Kol Yemei Chayai V'shaveti Bevet Adonai Leorech Yamim.
Thank you, Cantor. On behalf of Unity at Temple Sinai, as well as BMH, express a condolence to say, Bruchim Habaim, we're here to honor Leizer, to honor his life and to honor, as Sarah, you said, to celebrate not only a century of life, because longevity itself is just one measure, but it's the impact that you make on a community, on a family that we honor. As the cantor just sang, we read, God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You've set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You've anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house
You
of
hit
the
that
Lord
one I
forever.
set up there.
Shall live not forever, but live on in spirit and legacy and value. The things I nurtured will be carried on by my children, in this case for Leizer, his grandchildren and great-grandchildren. One last thing I'd like to share, and that's our gift that we still have. And wherever we go, we'll still be able to keep Leizer with us. It says, in the rising of the sun and in its going down, we will remember him. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we'll remember him. And the opening of buds and the rebirth of spring, we'll remember him. In the rustling of leaves and the beauty of autumn, we'll remember him. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength, we'll remember him. And when we are lost and sick at heart, just remember him. When we have joys we wish to share, remember him. For as long as we live, he too shall live, because he's a part of us as long as we remember.
This moment, we want to invite a longtime friend of the Molk family, fellow South African, our Chazan Emeritus, Joel Lichterman, to offer Psalm 121, Sa'inai El Ehari.
Good morning, friends. Leizer, of course, always remembered his roots. His early formative years in a small town near Nowheresville in South Africa. We would often speak in Afrikaans, which he never forgot. And I've taken the liberty of setting Psalm 121, Shir HaMa'alot, to a South African Afrikaans folk melody in Leizer's honor. This, of course, knowing of his love and appreciation for music. Shir HaMa'alot, Esa'enai el Harim, Me'ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai, Ose shamayim ba'aretz, Al yiten lamot raglecha, Al yanum shomerecha, Hine lo yanum velo yishan, Shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomerecha, Adonai tzilcha liyad yaminecha, Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka, v'yareach balayla. Adonai yishmerecha mikol ra, yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzedekah u'mahecha, me'ata v'ad, me'ata v'ad, me'ata v'ad, olam.
O God and God of our ancestors, our rock and our redeemer, 1,000 years in your sight are as a passing day, an hour of night. Our generations come and go while you endure forever. You're always in your hand, O Lord, in death as in life. trusting in your love and in your decisions. Lord in heaven, strengthen those who mourn the loss of Dr. Leizer Molk. Help them to look beyond this moment to realize that death can never destroy the bonds of love. Sustain them with the knowledge of our faith that you do not abandon our souls to the grave, that you do not allow your faithful to suffer oblivion. You, O Lord, have taught us the way of life. Through you we gain eternity. And let us all say, Amen. Today is the 5th day of the month of Cheshvan. When we blessed this month last week, we referred to the month as Mar Cheshvan, the bitter Cheshvan. Cheshvan is called bitter because after a month filled with a holiday every third or fourth day, it seemed, this month is the only one in the calendar that has no Jewish holidays other than Shabbat to celebrate. So it's called bitter. It's sad. It is bereft of an occasion to celebrate. The family of Leizer Molk, this month is bitter and sad for a similar reason. You might think that Leizer's Molk life, his long life, was a never-ending celebration. Now that his life is no more, well, there's one less holiday to mark, and it occurs during this month with no holidays in it. I guess we might be forgiven for thinking that Dr. Molk would live forever. He was into his 100th year here on earth, and the psalmist said it best, Lo amut ki achia, I shall not die, but live. Dr. Molk certainly lived life. Leizer loved life. He lived it well, and he lived it right. Every day of his life was a lesson. His lifetime, taken as a whole, a thorough and often amazing seminar on how to live the best life possible. Daily lessons in what is truly important and what is less important, in what counts and what doesn't count as much. When I called Kevin on Wednesday, I remarked that a long and beautiful journey had come to an end. He responded, yes, and what a blessing and privilege it has been. Now that he has passed in this month of Cheshvan, the lives of the family he loved so dearly, the lives of all those who knew him, have one less holiday in it. The truth is, each of Leizer's children, Barry, Kevin, and Alan, in our meeting last night, echoed similar sentiments about the role their father played in their lives. My conclusion, based on what I heard, is that Leizer, together with his wife, Daphne of blessed memory, who passed away in 1998, and at whose funeral I had the honor of presiding, was the most impactful person in each of their lives. There's so many things that could be said, and we have many family members who are here today who are going to be sharing brief memories of this towering patriarch. I just want to share one This week's Torah portion, we're going to read about the story of Noah. Everyone knows about Noah and the flood. Everyone knows that God came to Noah and said, the time has come for the world to end. Kates kol basar, the end of all flesh has come before me. Ki hishchit haaretz, the world has become corrupt. Noah is told to build a ship. He's going to set sail on that ship with his 3 children, members of his family, some animals, and of course food for the journey. Well, I think it's not an exaggeration to say that Leizer Molk, who became a doctor at age 21, saw early on some of the corruption that plagued the society in which he lived. He saw how certain people were marginalized and certain people were discriminated against. And either because he felt and his father felt that it was going to happen to them as Jews next, or motivated simply by the fact that he could not abide a society that would behave that way. Like Noah before him, he boarded the ship. And they traveled. They ended up first, they went to Rhodesia, of course, and then came here in 1966. Life was not free from challenges. He was already an accomplished doctor, but could not really practice medicine while he was here. Couldn't practice medicine until he became a citizen, and that would take 5 years. So for 5 years, he studied. He became expert in certain specialties, and he worked essentially as a resident or an intern, with all that implies, the long hours, the low pay, until he was finally able to take his place as the director of a clinic and then make a mark for many, many years on other doctors as well as patients. He had a quiet, firm fire in his belly for righteousness, for justice, for doing the right thing all the time. Those of you who knew him far better than I did know he was not a man of many words. He spoke, people listened. He had something to say. He would say it sometimes obliquely, sometimes directly. But you knew exactly where you stood with him. He had a long career. He retired at age 92, but kept on working. Well, actually, that's not true. He stopped working at 92. Is that correct? He stopped working at 92 at his own insistence. His patients did not want him to leave them. He looked in the mirror and said very honestly, I would not want to go to a doctor who's 92 years old. I don't care how good the doctor is. It's time for a change. And he cemented that decision by insisting that his dues to any medical associations and his license just not be kept up and not be renewed, because he made a vow not to practice anymore. He had a certain sense of propriety and doing what was right. Alongside of that, he had a lot of love inside of him for every member of his family. Last night, Sarah Rose happened to share one little word that I do not think would be equaled by anything else that could be said. So I'm going to share it, and if she wants to repeat it and expand upon it, that is. But she pointed out that as a grandfather and as a great-grandfather, he could relate to each child, each grandchild, each child individually. on his or her own terms, showing interest in what they were interested in and was able to ferret out what they needed at any moment. There was nothing generic about him. He was tailor-made to be the patriarch to each and every member of his family. He used to come to our synagogue for yard sites, and it was clear that he had a deep knowledge of our traditions, a deep knowledge of Hebrew, of Yiddish, of Afrikaans, and we've missed seeing certain members of the family. I don't want to step on their toes. I'm going to call first on his three children, in this order: Barry, Kevin, and Alan. Forward and share instances.
Apologize for reading, but not legal was unable to accommodate my PowerPoint presentation. And I'm sorry, Dad, but my laser pointer is missing. Laser, little did your father know that one day your name would be synonymous with cutting edge technology. Of course, we always knew that, as did your classmates, who were convinced you had the power to suck knowledge out of their brains. Dad, you inspired us by your example. Hard, long hours of work. I never heard you complain about being tired or a bad day at the office. Honestly, there was no other option. The joy of living. As you would say, and I apologize to my French-Canadian son-in-law, the joie de vivre. You never missed an opportunity to emphasize the importance of an education. Barry, your A minus obviously means you can do better. You encouraged us to succeed and then have joy. Your pearls of wisdom are glistening around the neck of all your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. You supported us in our career choices, taught us to do what's right, to appreciate life, while never profiting in glory or financially at the expense of others. Except, of course, when playing golf. Dad, I try to live by those values. I will miss you. I miss you with sadness. A genuine smile on my face. I love you. It's hard to change your thought patterns. You've always thought of your parents in the present tense. And now you have to think of them in the past tense. I didn't think I could write a note in the past tense, so I'm going to talk in the present tense. Dad, I want to tell you about how much you really miss after you died, about how many people, all I think about while writing this down, you're saying to me, it's not necessary to say anything. I will be dead. I will not hear you. I can't tell you how many times he said that at Giant's restaurant. The subject came up. It was always the same thing. Dad, of course,
You are right. You were always so practical. You were always able to put the right perspective on emotional subjects. But since you're not here in person, to say it's not necessary, I want to mention all of the patients whose lives you affected profoundly. From the 10-year-old boy you saved from a death sentence after being bitten and envenomated by one of the most poisonous snakes in the world, to the patient whom you gave permission to complain about her shortness of breath from her severe COPD and her severe back pain from arthritis. Thus change her depression and loss of hope to joy and a will to live. You did that 20 years ago. I still see her regularly with a smile and a will to live. Dad, you gave her many productive and happy years without giving her any actual physical medical treatment. That was something that none of her other doctors or specialists were ever able to give her. There isn't a week that goes by without 2 or 3 people telling me about the care you gave to them and how it impacted their lives and how grateful they are to you for that care. Sometimes given only in one visit. Your passion to help people, all people, regardless of race, religion, or social status, has been infinitely inspiring to me. So, Dad, I wanted to thank you for helping me with my journey in life and for helping our patients with their more complicated journeys. Dad, I will miss you. And may the force be with you. Probably the I gave a little talk to the family. What I said my piece. You know, for the last year and a half, to myself, I've been referring to my dad, to Leizer, as my sweet Leiskala, because he was. There's not enough time, not enough words to convey who Leizer was, how he lived, how he impacted everybody that he met or came in contact with. Anybody who knew him walked away with a sense of his intellect, his compassion, his knowledge, and his wonderful sense of humor. He had a joke for any occasion. The man was amazing. His memory was unmatched. He could recall things from when he was a small child. And his ability to recall jokes was unmatched. He was truly a Renaissance man. Not many of those gentlemen lived and survived as long as Leizer.
He could talk to you about history, any history. He could talk to you about religion. He obviously could talk about medicine. He could talk philosophy. There wasn't a subject he was not able to talk about and engage. And as my daughter Sarah Rose conveyed to the rabbi, he communicated with each person, each of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. He found each person's path to relate to it. He was a completely unselfish person. His commitment to life, or the way he led life, was to accept the things that he couldn't change, talked about them, discussed them, changed what he could, steadfastly, had this amazing way of living. He lived life. You know, if you could equate 18 holes of golf, his passion, to life, Leizer got in 36 holes. I think he got in 50. Back in 3. 20 plus. Very special. Never, never had a bad word to say to anybody. Even those who deserved it, he didn't have a bad word to say. My thanks to my father and my late mother for allowing me to have the life I have, to have given me and instilled in me principles that one should live by. Caring for others, doing for others without expecting anything in return, and always having a sense of humor. If you can't make other people laugh, well, that's unfortunate. I will miss my father here.
I'm going to call on a few of the grandchildren. We're here, Shari Molk, then Doreen Molk, and Thorn, Claire Molk, and Sarah Rose.
You always introduced me as the oldest grandchild. There are so many things that I love about you, but you're just so cute. I always loved your name from the time I could talk. They call you Laser Beam. I loved your stories and musings and memories of going to the opera with you because I had time with you. I loved that you were the one who pierced my ears because doesn't every doctor just happen to have an ear piercing done? I love that you appreciated each of us, such as me as our family's conduit for tears, and you always made sure that I wrote our annual Thanksgiving. I love that you snuck the car out to drive down back streets to your favorite bakery a few times past and the driving days winding down. I love that every time we came over to take you to eat, you always insisted that we pick where to go. You were happy if we were happy. Even when the kids picked Chili's or black eyed tea every single time. I love how your eyes lit up whenever you saw us and how proud you were of each of your children, your grandchildren, and your great grandchildren. I always loved your smile. I loved you introducing Slivovitz to my in-laws and making them laugh for hours. I loved when you showed my children card tricks and captured their interest in stories about Africa. I loved that I was able to hold your hand and hear you say sweetheart. But you left us. I was that day and woke up. Dream. I sleep with you in the memories of you laughing in your heart. And it's filled with joy. And I can't help but to conclude with this commemorative speech that I wrote 26 years ago as I was finishing college. And to my dear Nana, her beloved late Daphne Cole, helped me with the details. And I also have the privilege of sharing this with you back then, but I want to share with everyone now. When I was a child, my grandfather was simply my grandfather, who loved me and spoiled me, but I did not know him. As a child, I was ignorant to the tremendous talent and wisdom that Leizer Molk possessed. I did not know him. But as an adult, I have learned who this wonderful man is because I've opened my eyes to the deeply rooted tree of knowledge and wisdom, a tree whose branches reach far, giving to others. I know he carries the wisdom and the memory of his brilliant parents in these outstretched branches. He carries on the memory because he carries the wisdom, the philosophy, the honor. He loves to learn and excelled in education, graduating medical school before the age of 22 in South Africa, and he went on to obtain the highest degree in England as a member and fellow of the Royal College of Physicians. It is nearly impossible to condense my grandfather's noble qualities, for he is the most diversely talented individual I've ever known. But I will show how he truly exemplifies humility, patience, and generosity. Oh, so humble is the man I speak of, for he told me not to exaggerate if I insisted on speaking of him. A man who requires no exaggeration, for he embodies the definition of the all-encompassing tree of knowledge. Noah's knowledge is not limited to medicine, for he has an exceptional. He tried endless. Patience is a virtue, and patience is my grandfather. Not only will the information help me my hands will help another. Yet his patience is so gentle, and so natural, it requires no effort. My grandfather becomes a book accepting problems, concerns that need to be put away. Generous is the man who Susan Amori was required to enter. Generous is the man who exchange. Generous is my friend. Generous is a man who created a black medical generous is a man who took not to jeopardize his family's safety by becoming a partner of public health. My grandfather had taught never to discriminate regardless of race, color, or religion. In South Africa, Northern Rhodesia, but after 17 years, independence was declared and his children had limited opportunity for education. Generous is a man who thinks of his children. Generous is a man who moves his family to the United States and his children outside. Generous is the man who put 2 sons through medical school and another through law school. Generous is my man. It was difficult to start out in this country, especially when my grandfather realized that in practice, we had racial problems as well. But he continues to do his best. I believe that the core of his existence is to pass on the belief of his parents and his father. Do all the good you can do, and hopefully it will rub off and influence those who come into contact with. I certainly won't graduate medical school at 22. But I hope to retain the inspirational depth of virtue and vitality that I've learned from my grandfather. I hope I can do my part as a small limb of the all-encompassing tree by doing my best, bringing good to those I encounter. I can no longer say I do not know my grandfather because he has not depth in my life and given me a more expansive and meaningful perception on patience, generosity, and humility. Papa, you always insist on holding the door for us. It's our turn to take the deepest bow of gratitude and hold the door for you. May you rest in love and peace and know that we will all strive to honor you and your legacy as we live out our days. We love and miss you. And I want to share something from my brother who's next in line for the grandchildren. And I know he also got the opportunity to share this with Papa, but I don't know if all of you heard. So Papa, we want to share one more time. Papa, I'm going to have Sherry read a short message for you, as I know she'll impart the adequate or possibly excessive amount of emotional inflection into my words. Papa, for 100 years, you've been the pillar of our family, carrying forth and building upon the life lessons you gleaned from your mother and father, setting the standards for dedication, morality, work ethic, and also of modesty. In the beginning of my life, you were already more myth than man. As Sherry and I spent much of our youth with you and Nana, some of my earliest memories are of your shadowy figure performing your early morning calisthenics before the sun was even up. I would wake to see you silently doing your push-ups and sit-ups in the dark out in the living room quietly so you didn't wake any of us. In those days, I didn't know much about you. I knew you were my father's boss, which was a feat in and of itself. And I knew Uncle Alan and Uncle Kevin also had to answer to you. I assumed you were some sort of super athlete for who else could exercise before sunrise. I knew you were feared on the golf course, and I was fairly certain that you single-handedly trekked across southern Africa, escaping oppressive governments, conquering the dark continent, and safely guided the family in a horse-drawn wagon, first to northern Rhodesia, and eventually the United States. Okay, some of these ideas, I think you did splice together from books at the time. I knew you primarily survived off soft-boiled egg and porridge with a giant cup of butter in it that Nana always made for you every morning before work. As children, Sherry and I used to hang off Uncle Alan's biceps so he could demonstrate his power in being able to suspend nearly 30 pounds of childhood unharmed. I was almost positive that had you not been so modest and humble, you could have easily had Uncle Alan hanging from your bicep at the same time. I knew if there was a question to be answered, you would have the answer. I knew that every time you spoke, there was something to be learned, but I was just a little kid and you were a legend. As I grew, my immature little brain was eventually able to process and appreciate the lifetime of amazing experiences you have bestowed on me. The things you've seen, lessons you've learned, the wisdom you've accumulated, the guidance and direction you've taken our family, your willingness and strength to stand strong in the face of tragedy, not for yourself, but for all of us around you. And as I finally reached adulthood a few months ago, I realized that you are even more legendary than I ever imagined as a child. And I find myself wishing for those days again. I wish I had woken up early before sunrise and maybe told you to tie your bathrobe a little tighter before doing push-ups. And I wish I had sat with you in those early mornings eating porridge and soft-boiled eggs and learning more about the important things in life. I wish I had asked you more questions and listened to more answers. But I was just a little kid and you were a legend. We all went through that.
It's a really hard act to follow. I was told that we need to speak into the mic or via text. About 3 or 4 years ago, I tried to interview my grandfather for StoryCorps. For those of you who don't know what StoryCorps is, it's the opportunity for one person to interview someone else who's special to them, and you record it on your phone, and then it's archived in the Library of Congress. So I prepared myself for the big day. I got some questions ready. I sat down with Papa. I was kind of nervous and excited, but as you probably anticipated, he was like the most reluctant participant in this interview. He never really answered my questions. It was like pulling teeth to get him to tell me about his life. And about 45 minutes in, I just sort of gave up on it. It was disappointing, but it's not surprising. As I was saying, it's the world's most humble man isn't going to sit there and boast about his life experiences and what he's done and all that he's accomplished. But the truth was, it was more for me. When you talk with Papa, I felt like everything he said carried weight. As if what he said, I should take it home and consider it later for its worth and its value and how I could improve my life. I wanted to have that interview so I could relinquish myself of that pressure, honestly. I wanted to not feel as though his pills of wisdom were falling through my fingers. And I was afraid, as he got older, that his incredible life and the beautiful person he was would be lost by me and those of the next generation. And now that he's gone, it's finally in my sorrow, I realize that his legacy isn't the kind that can be recorded or written. It survives in us and how we live our lives. When we give respect to others, when we withhold judgment, we carry him with us. When we speak for what's right, we give space for others to be right too, we carry him with us. When we learn something new and teach others as well, we carry him with us. When we strive to be better every day, don't showcase these efforts, we carry him with us. When we live ethically, morally, and improve the lives of those around us, we carry him with us. Papa, when I first watched an opera with you, like most kids, I did not like it. It was far too dramatic and somehow still boring. But I saw that you connected with it, and as I got older, I chose to use it as a way to connect with you too. I began to realize through experiencing opera with you what a passionate and emotional person you were. It wasn't just the music that you loved, it was the tragedy and the love that were in these characters and the stories. I finally began to understand the fierceness with which you love those around you. I'm so grateful to have known you for 35 years. I'm grateful to have known you as an adult, to have been be able to appreciate all the good you brought into this world. You've been an incredible role model, and you've made me a better person. My heart aches to lose you, and it's finally time for you to rest. Thank you for every moment, for every dinner, for every aria, and for every lesson. I love you. Any words I say will fall short, but I'd like to try because I'm nothing less than honored to be here, remembering a man who deserves the highest praise and celebration. Whenever I go to consult my conscience, it ends up being a conversation with Papa in my head. And his words to always choose love over hate, while they always echo, it was his example that taught me what they meant and left me truly speechless. And I'm sad that I won't be able to witness those lessons anymore. But I'm grateful that I'll continue to share memories with all of you and keep learning from him. Papa, thank you for impressing on me the love that persists when words fail. Say that Papa was indeed the connector for our family. As much as we all love each other, I think we can say that he brought us closer and he gave us purpose for so many reasons. And in part, I think that that's because we had a great sense of gratitude and pride in who we are as a family. And to be a Molk means the legacy that he built with Nana. And as was mentioned, we each had a different relationship with him, each one of us. Some of us went to the opera or tried. I was never a part of that. Some listened to his stories about Africa and history. And my dad and I would take on the responsibility of eating croissants with him in the morning and taking him to ice cream at night, which was a huge sacrifice on our part, but that was our role instead of going to the opera. And I think, as everybody has said, he has surpassed every statistic, and as both brilliant, he was an incredible doctor. And I will always remember him for that. But what I will remember him for the most is that he made me laugh. Always the best dressed man in the room. He opened every car door, and he would never let a woman pay for a meal. He was a true gentleman. And I will love him. To have spent time with him and to have gotten to know him.
It always says that there are angels that accompany the soul of the loved one to its journey to its heavenly resting place. Sometimes there are angels who were there while the person is still alive. And certainly members of the family will fill that role. I want to call upon Fidela Brown. She was certainly an angel. Leizer. She did that the family say that was the case.
Just want to say, the trees are crying with us.
I, Leizer Molk. Somehow we found ourselves each other. To tell me one funny thing. Nobody. You're both like it was so wonderful that you took such good care of him. At the end of his life and death. Thank you so much for doing that. I was just going to say, in 1977, I'm probably Kevin's on my third date. I said, so where are we going? Thinking we were going out to dinner. And Kevin says, oh, I hope it's okay. We're going to my parents. I can get a haircut. I barely know you. Are you going to meet your parents today? So we went there. They weren't expecting to meet me. I was not expecting to meet them, but there we were. Kevin went in the kitchen with his mother for his haircut, and I kept sitting downstairs next to his father. A complete stranger to me. I was 23 years old, and I thought, I was very unhappy sitting there with this total strange man. But as you all know, there was never anyone like Leizer. In only a few minutes, we were happily chatting away, me not realizing that by Leizer being who he was sealing my fate and my future. I was falling into the Molk charm. When I agreed to marry Kevin, I was always a little unsure as to whether I was in love with him or with his family. I was so very lucky to have Daphne and Leizer as my in-laws. It made me feel so loved and welcome from the very beginning. I think of Leizer. I always think of him as such a gentleman, so handsome, so charming, so brilliant. One of the kindest, most forgiving men I've ever known. Years ago, he once introduced me to someone. It's the closest thing he ever had to a daughter, and that was one of the proudest things. I was so happy for that. Through the years, he gave so much to us, never expecting anything in return. Even as he got older and older and older, he was still always a pleasure to be around, always the type of man you couldn't help but love. Daphne used to say that she would have loved to have been lost on a deserted island with Leizer, or Lovey as she called him. I always feel that I was lucky to have my Kevin as she was to have the Leizer. Leizer was a wonderful, wonderful man. He was my father-in-law, my children's grandfather, my grandchildren's great-grandfather, and we all loved him. For years and years, I heard how his patients loved and appreciated him. Leizer never had an unkind word from anyone. Neither did anyone ever have an unkind word for him. I loved him and I will miss him. There will never be another dead Dr. Leizer Molk. Goodbye, Leizer. Rest in peace.
I just want to say very quickly, Leizer, I love you. Thank you for accepting me into your family. I love being part of this family. I'm going to miss most our chats about religion and life. I'm going to miss our brunches at Catherine's, our hacienda nights, your help with my crossword puzzles. You taught me how to do Sudoku. You were a brilliant man. I love you. I'm going to miss you.
In the ancient world, people would wear clothing as a sign of multitude. In the ancient days, no one had multiple coats or shirts or pairs of pants. To wear an article of clothing was a very serious gift. Symbolically, we have a ribbon that represents this moment of grief, and we're going to make a blessing. We'll all answer our name to the blessing, and the family will then, 3 children will then tear the Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam v'hayan ha'emet. Amen. You, ruler of the world, who is righteous. I'm about to have Torah and Earth from Jerusalem. Spend time in Jerusalem. He connects. It's the holiest place for a Jew to be buried. Not everyone can be buried here, so we bring a little Jerusalem. בעבר על הארץ אשר היה. רוח תשיב על העולים not return to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns unto God. Those who wish to put earth into laser fun and earth replacement, do so. The shovel, you just want to cover the top of the coffin.
Turtami, Burki Holder Haspatel, Munabinabe, Sadi, Kriasharku, Turtami, Holko Ani, Omalama, Chitan, Ashati, Matabunami, Masayam, Oh, Gidol Hai, Sabarabha, Yashem, Alfoka, Hebni Adam, the Tate Nishkidracha, the Hifrim, Allah. להגיד כשרת צורי ולא עוולת תבוא. אדוני נתן ואדוני לקח, ישם אדוני מבורך, והוא רחום יכפר בן ולא ישחית, והרבה להשיבה פה ולא יעיר כל חמתו.
That's very heaven. Now, to join me in the words of the mourners, Kaddish. They'll say the Kaddish, we all answer Amen. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, B'nei Rabbah, B'yalma, Divarach Yiruteh, B'yamlich Malchuteh, B'chayecho, B'yamecho, B'chayei B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, B'bizman Kariv, V'imru Amen, Yehei Shnei Rabbah, B'varach, Le'olam, L'mel Maya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitalev, Yitalav, Shemei B'Kitshabri, Ve'ela, Yikol Berchata, V'Shirata, Zushvachata, V'Nechemata, Da'amiran B'Yalma, V'Milu Amen, Yehei Shlama Rabbanim Shemaya, V'Chaim Aleinu, V'Yalkol Yisrael, V'Milu Amen, Aseh Shalom, V'Ramav, V'Huya Aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'Yalkol Yisrael, V'Milu Amen. We'll conclude our service with the Amalei Rachamim, the memorial prayer in honor of Dr. Molk.
Malei Rachamim, Shochen B'Meromim, Ha'ametzeh Menucha Nechona, Ha'achat Kanefei HaShechina, B'Mahalot Kedoshim U'Diorim, Kezor HaRakia, Nazihirim, Et Nishmat Eliezer Ben Binyamin Sarah, Shehalach Le'olamo, Began Eden, Noi Began Eden, Tehei Menuchato, Anna Bal Harachamim, Hastirei V'Seder G'navecha, עולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו אדוני ונחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר אמן.
We're going to conclude our service with the forming of a double line, and the double line facing each other will allow Leizer's children to walk through. We're going to offer words of condolence to them. There's going to be a Zoom Mincha service at 4 o'clock this afternoon. I'll be presiding over that. Those of you who are going to be participating will know the Zoom address. And I believe it's going to be on the Feldman's website as well. 4 o'clock, a way for the family to say the mourner's Kaddish before the onset of Shabbat. And the rest of Shiva is going to be done privately following Shabbat. So we can form the double line as we already have. And as Kevin, Alan, and Barry make their way through the line, please repeat the following words after me. We direct these words to them. Hamakom, Yenachem, Etchem, B'toch, Sha'ar, Avelei, Tzion, Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among all who mourn in Zion and for Jerusalem. We all say, Amen. This concludes our service.
Thank you everyone for your attention.